Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning in to AMTV Alternative Media Television. It is Monday, February 24th, 2014. Put out a very important video earlier this afternoon titled Revolution, the Truth About Ukraine. Please watch it, share it, go into detail how this is a U.S.-led, European Union-led coup. This has been the intention from the get-go. People like Senator John McCain have been visiting Ukraine weeks prior to any of this actually happening, and of course encouraging the terrorists that wear ski masks and throw Molotov cocktails into the street so that they can put a new dictatorial government in power against the will of the Ukrainian people. This would be the equivalent of the United States battling a revolution out with Canada to the north and Mexico to the south telling us what to do. You can imagine that the Ukrainian people can only resent both regimes in both parties in this tug-of-war, which in my opinion all but solidifies a civil war, which I believe is already taking place in Ukraine. Not to mention the military strategic checkpoint that is Crimea, that is the Black Sea Fleet, where Russia stations good portions of its navy, warships, airplanes, and part of their military. Now on the move, according to Zero Hedge, Russian ships, even more ships carrying soldiers, said to be en route to Sevastopol, which is the port of Crimea. Those tracking the developments in the Ukraine and specifically the Russian response to this weekend's coup will be interested to note that according to the Russian FLOT.com website, the large landing ship Nikolai Filichnikov, previously known for its participation in the Syrian naval arms buildup, is expected to arrive in the Crimean port, carrying some 200 armed soldiers sent from the nearby Black Sea town. This breaking on Zero Hedge, adding even more naval power to the ships already stationed in Crimea by Russia. Again, this is a strategic military checkpoint, reminiscent of what Americans feared. Many of you probably remember Cold War fears, a new war brewing between Russia, the Soviet Union, Vladimir Putin, and the United States engaged in this information propaganda war. Now, of course, Russia's Black Sea Fleet in Ukraine, 70% of their Black Sea Fleet infrastructure located in Crimea. I also talked about in the previous video about the natural gas exports that run through Russia, 25%, 80% of which is exported to European Union countries throughout the European bloc. Another reason why there is so much keen Western-backed interest in this area, in the Ukraine specifically, and it is why we are engaged in a propaganda war. In addition to that, Russia fires first retaliatory action may limit Ukraine food imports some 25%, citing a limit increased risk on food imports from Ukraine given fears of loose safety control. So they're going after food in retaliation. Susan Rice mentioned earlier that it would be a mistake, representing the United States, said it would be a mistake if Russia and Vladimir Putin's government were to intervene in Ukraine, really just respond to an American-led attack and an American-led coup with tanks. A Russian general who was interviewed earlier in the month, February 5th, had really some important things to say that I think were much overlooked by the mainstream media. He says, apparently they, officials of the European Union and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, have dedicated themselves and continue to do so to deeply and thoroughly studying the doctrine of Dr. Goebbels. They present everything backwards from reality. It is one of the formulas which Nazi propaganda employed most successfully. They accuse the party that is defending itself of aggression. What is happening in Ukraine and Syria is a project of the West, a new type of war. In both places, you see a clear anti-Russian approach. And as is well known, wars today begin with psychological and information warfare operations. Kerry and Obama are encouraging in Kiev what they harshly repress in their country. European leaders break up unauthorized demonstrations with hoses, throwing demonstrators in jail. We saw this with Occupy Wall Street, while in the Ukrainian case, they do the exact opposite. And on top of that, they threaten Russia. Logically, this is part of information warfare. This interview and this quote was conducted earlier in the month, February 5th, and of course, Senator John McCain out here in Arizona, who we've had the pleasure of interviewing, has also been meeting with opposition forces, just like he did in Syria, weeks prior to the U.S.-led and backed revolution in Ukraine. Of course, the United States and the European Union have a very keen self-interest in this region as they prepare for war with Russia that has ships now on the move, adding to their inventory in their Russian Black Sea fleet of naval capacity based in Crimea, based in Ukraine. Another article, this is from a Russian newswire that I translated, says what is happening in Ukraine and Syria is a Western project, a new type of war. Again, I reported on this extensively in Syria. We are engaged in a propaganda war. This is being led by the United States. Whether or not it was the Egypt revolution and re-revolution, or it was the attempted war in Syria, or now what we're playing with, which is a very dangerous fire here in the Ukraine, courtesy of the Obama administration and the global cabal of bankers and economic interests that make up the West, that make up the European Union, the United Nations, the World Bank, etc. And this is an image, and I think it's an important image to note, just one of thousands, if not tens of thousands. This is what the United States is supporting in Ukraine. This gas-masked protester lighting shit on fire. This is what the United States promotes. They promote violence. They promote violent coups. Again, Molotov cocktail throwing terrorists in other parts of the world, while mocking and also taking violent action in the United States against peaceful sit-in protesters, as was the case with Occupy Wall Street. We all remember Mayor Bloomberg sending in the cavalry of horses to clear out, and hoses of water to clear out the dirty hippie protesters, which many of these politicians spoke to during the Occupy Wall Street movement and the movement against bailouts and tyranny and the policies at the Federal Reserve. Meanwhile, the former president of Ukraine on the run, Yanukovych, wanted over mass killings in Ukraine, whereabouts unknown, fleeing the scene as they put a new dictator into power to replace him, although this time it's Western backed, so it's got the Western stamp of approval. Also, RT, Ukraine's new authorities resort to dictatorial methods in the region. Again, this all part of the West's propaganda campaign, this information war to gather support in this part of the world to topple one dictator to trade him for another. This time with U.S. interests, and this time with the intention of saddling Ukraine with massive amounts of debt to integrate them fully into the global cabal that makes up the European Union, to create this indebtedness into infinity, and of course prep for war with Russia. Russia, of course, knows that this is happening. They're sending even more naval ships to Crimea to just really stockpile. They're already 70% of their Black Sea Fleet infrastructure located in Crimea, Ukraine. Russia also keeps 161 planes and helicopters in the area, airfields under the terms of its lease deal with Ukraine. This is what it's all about, folks. It's about war. We're engaged not just in an information war, but a soon-to-be physical war, a civil war where Russia supporters and the pro-Russian East fighting the injected, armed, and motivated Ukrainian West, which of course has been propagated by U.S. politicians like Senator John McCain, the President of the United States, Barack Obama, and others, all leading to war. I can't help but think we should stay completely out of this, that Americans are entirely upset and against another aggressive intervention in an independent sovereign nation that we have no business interfering with. But of course, this is the agenda of the global banking cartel and the oligarchy that rules the world and rules America against American interests, the will of the people, and really not just Americans, but the will of the people around the world. Get it out, make it viral, hard-hitting and in your face. Peace.